Darkness Falls. Time, November 6th, 2021. Dear friends and family members, I, Zhang Matzi, will take you to Dongzong today and live broadcast the pilgrimage with you. Friends who like it, pick up your little fortune-making hands, the little red hearts, and start walking in a wave of 666. Old fellows, let's meet up with the outdoor bosses from Hua Yin this morning. Hey, why is it getting dark? It's such a big cloud. Guys, take a look. Why is this cloud so big? There's a helicopter coming over there. A friend in a live broadcast room told me that someone was going through a tribulation and asked me to find a place to hide. Let me tell you, let alone a tribulation, it would be like a thunderbolt. Unless the phone has no battery, I will never stop broadcasting. Let me tell you, family members, the doenjang in our hometown is really good, not only for dipping vegetables, but also for dipping it into whatever is delicious. See the clouds? Dip it into doenjang, and it will taste delicious. If you're interested, please order the little blue cart below. It's 9 cents for free shipping. Buy one and get one free. It's so disgusting. Is the green belt dipped in miso? Why is there such a nonsense in Norway? I will block it decisively. Zhang Fan, who was working hard in the toilet, raised his head and looked at the window. It was indeed a bit dark, but this was not Dongzong, but Tutsuan City, the southern gateway to the imperial capital. Zhang Fan hurriedly pulled up his pants and wanted to use his phone to see what was going on. A lot of software was pushed over. He clicked on one and saw an overwhelming barrage of bullets. It's dark here in Yunbei. Our G-gang is also black. Which great god is this trying to overcome the tribulation? Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know. You idiot. Why am I crying? I heard there is one, you idiot melon skin. Follow me 666 and leave in the dark. 666 is invincible. Stay in formation below. 666. Zhang Fan turned off the barrage and listened to the official live broadcast. Dear viewers, this is the Looking Up News channel. Dear viewers, what you're watching is the Looking Up News channel. I am the host, O Yingzi. My current location is at the City Hall in Strasbourg. A riot just occurred here. The French police used a large number of police forces to forcibly disperse the rioters. This riot caused more than 10 people to be injured. We will report the follow-up situation to you as soon as possible. Now, let's connect with other observers to understand the situation in various places. Hello, host. This is Rwanda in Africa. Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know. Okay, starting this afternoon, the sky here began to suddenly darken. As you can see, it is now completely dark. People here are very panicked. Local government officials gave explanations, but the dissatisfied crowd still refused to leave and wanted to know the truth. Our other observers have also discovered similar incidents. If you have any information, please contact us as soon as possible. Okay, I will send you the follow-up progress as soon as possible. Okay, please be safe then. We will connect to other regions next. Zhang Fan put his cell phone in his trouser pocket and ran back to his workstation. The windows were crowded with people, and his boss also came out of the office to comfort everyone, saying that this was just a normal astronomical phenomenon, and asked his subordinates to turn on the projector and connect to the official video. Today we have invited 2 guests. One is the internationally renowned astronomer Li Tianqing, and the other is astrophysics professor and Nobel Prize winner Lin Guanyue. Hello, 2 guests. Regarding the solar occlusion event that occurred today, because no astronomical warning was received in advance, many people felt panicked, which triggered a lot of speculation. Some speculations are Mayan prophecies. We know that in the Mayan prophecies, the sun will completely disappear on November 11th. What do you 2 think? Hello, host. Regarding the disappearance of the sun today, causing temporary global darkness. First of all, please don't panic. This is just a normal astronomical phenomenon. There have also been incidents in history where the disappearance of the sun caused people to panic because a total solar eclipse was not predicted. If I remember correctly, it should be in public. There was one in 666 AD and the second time in 999 AD. So don't be nervous about this incident. As for the rumors, there are more. Didn't it trigger the prediction that the world would be destroyed in the millennium in 1999? But it's 2021 now. Aren't we all doing well? These are nonsense. Historically, from the past to the present, there have been some people with ulterior motives who used astronomical phenomena to cause trouble. We all know that this time the darkness lasts from a few minutes to more than 10 minutes, depending on the region. Now all regions have returned to normal. Regarding the disappearance of the sun, from a physical perspective, 3-minute explanation. I also agree with most of this point, and another guest started 5-minute insights. Therefore, this incident is completely in line with science. We should feel lucky to encounter such a wonderful phenomenon in our lifetime, because this kind of phenomenon has not been seen in thousands of years. 3 minutes of emotion. Okay, thank you two authoritative experts for their explanations, which made us suddenly enlightened. The special astronomical anomalies have their own scientific reasons. We should look at the problem scientifically and solve the problem. For some rumors, we must use scientific weapons to refute them without unnecessary panic. Okay, this is the end of our special program. Please pay attention to our official account and QR code. The next broadcast for you is turning off the projector. The boss clapped his hands vigorously and shouted, Okay, Shally, you managers should quickly get everyone back to normal working conditions. We are still 70 million short of the target for this quarter. I have already booked lunch for everyone today to calm everyone down. Everyone sees the time to get started. Prioritize the projects that have entered the market. Those who have already received payment should seize the time to visit customers. You must build a good relationship with customers. Relationship is the primary productivity. Zhang Fan was no longer in the mood to listen to the boss's mobilization speech. He touched his chest and was very confident in his judgment. He had felt something was wrong about half a year ago. The reason was an ancient jade hidden in his chest. Although the ancient jade looked very ordinary, like the Tianyuan Tongbao in the past, and it did not look very expensive, but he was so sure. He was admitted to college more than 10 years ago, and his family was not well off. His father secretly took this ancient jade, which was said to be an ancestral hand, to an antique shop or a gold and jade shop to pawn it. As a result, the clerk said it was the most ordinary pendant and was only worth a few hundred yuan. His father was disappointed and stopped thinking about the jade. A few years ago, there were sudden changes in the family. His parents were seriously injured in a car accident. He just got married and gave birth to a child. Zhang Fan, who was deeply in debt, turned his head and thought about this jade again. He traveled to many places, but the appraisal concluded that it was an ordinary piece of jade, which was only a year or two old. It was not an ancient jade passed down from his ancestors, but Zhang Fan knew that his grandfather had worn this ancient jade when he was a child. Later, it was passed on to his father. After his parents died, it came into his own hands. He only knew the history of it for decades. How could it be an ordinary new jade? Since he failed to fulfill his filial piety and take good care of his parents, Zhang Fan felt very guilty. He had a big fight with his wife and got divorced. There was a joke on the internet that he found very vivid. When he got home, the food was colder than hot, and there was no soup in the pot, but there was pulp, although it was not because of this cuckolding. But his wife basically doesn't care about her family affairs. Zhang Fan earns more than 10,000 yuan a month, and basically has to hand over the rest after paying off the loan. However, his wife spends the money she earns on herself, and her money is mine, and your money is used to support the family. He spent hundreds of thousands as a bride price when marrying his wife, and took out loans to buy a car and a house, which emptied his parents' savings. In addition, he was breathless with nearly 5-digit repayments every month, and had no savings at all. When his parents had a car accident, he couldn't even pay for the first aid, so he had to crowdfund. He didn't even think about selling the house. His wife didn't agree because his name was added to the purchase. From the time of the divorce to the present, Zhang Fan, who was in his 30s, has had gray hair and started to suffer from neurasthenia several times over the house. Half a year ago, the child cried at night. He was woken up and felt a warmth in his chest. He was already in debt and had trouble sleeping, remembering that it was an ancient jade. He took out the ancient jade and saw that the jade pendant flashed a faint red light for more than 10 seconds, as if it was breathing. He thought he had seen it wrong, but the child kept crying, so he casually put it on the child. The child immediately became energetic and stopped crying. Later, his friends found out and said he should go to the hospital to see if he was under too much pressure. His friends took turns asking him to drink, and each time they ended up enlightening him. Afterwards, he became obsessed with this ancient jade and spent a lot of money to go to professional institutions for appraisal. Without exception, they said it was a very ordinary jade, worth only a few hundred yuan, not as expensive as an appraisal of several thousand yuan. It was not an ancient jade passed down from his ancestors at all. Now he felt that this jade was a treasure, and he stopped crying after giving it to a crying child. It was said to be new jade, but the history he knew was decades old. Although the jade had never shone brightly since then, Zhang Fan, who was somewhat mentally weak, seemed to be possessed. He was in his 30s and had no intention to work, resulting in poor performance. There was a sharp decline, and the boss talked to him several times. The implication was that he had found a new job and was ready to leave. He could give Zhang Fan a little extra salary, but he had to finish all the projects at hand and bring in a new person to replace him so that everyone could get together and relax. He had something on his mind, so he just went down the slope and asked for an extra sum of money from the boss. He planned to sell the house and go back to his parents' hometown to start a new life with his children there. After all, the consumption in big cities was high, which was also a sad place. It was better to take the children back to his hometown to start a small business and raise the children. It can be said that Zhang Fan was disheartened after all these things and basically had no nostalgia for this place. Except for a few friends who invited him to drink and enlighten him, they were a little reluctant. Until last night, the jade pendant glowed red again. He was sure that something was wrong. Plus what happened during the day. He was not in the mood to work anymore, so he called his successor, Meng Fei, a newcomer who had been in the workplace for half a year. Xiao Fei, sort out what you're doing and see if there are any problems. I'm going to leave tomorrow. Brother Zhang, let's go now, Xiao Fei shouted a little reluctantly. Well, I've been with you for half a year, and all the clients have been handed over. I think you can take charge of your own business, so it's time to go. There are also those big government and enterprise clients. You should pay more attention. After giving the order, he turned to find the finance department. I'll pay the fees and wages. Zhang Fan was not as polite as usual. Huh? What's the salary? Aren't the expenses reimbursed only after the project is completed? The female finance officer in her 40s said casually. Then you just do the math first, do you hear me? Don't compete with me, or I'll slap you loudly. After raising his hand to scare the finance manager, Zhang Fan turned around and went to the boss's house. After greeting the boss with false politeness, Zhang Fan went to the kindergarten to pick up the child while contacting the agency. Ong, it's me. The house will be priced at this price. I agree, but the money must be paid in one go. Do you understand? Zhang Fan kept making phone calls along the way, asking friends who should be contacted and things that should be explained one by one. He wanted to leave immediately. You're leaving now? Is it so sudden? This is Truman, a college classmate who stayed in a city. He also wanted to persuade Zhang Fan. Sure, I'm leaving. Please pay more attention recently and prepare more food and drinks. Well, I'm ready to go home. When you come to my hometown, I'll treat you to a drink. Zhang Fan thought about it for a long time and finally said it. Isn't it dark today? I don't think it's a good thing. Don't take it seriously. Prepare more food and drink. He asked again. He called the few friends he was qualified to give advice to, and he also spoke vaguely to others who were polite to him because of their workplace relationships. Many people thought that Zhang Fan had something wrong with his brain, but Zhang Fan ignored them and flew back to his hometown with his children with more than 2 million yuan sold that night. In the evening, many people who knew that he was going back to his hometown that day were a little surprised, and their cell phones kept ringing. Zhang Fan turned off his phone directly. When he turned on the computer, he began to clear his balance. He did not dare to buy more rice, white flour, salt, and various beans for fear of being caught and accused of illegally stocking food. He only picked up boxes of compressed biscuits, individual soldier rations, and frantically placed orders for energy bars, chocolate, purified water, and everything else he wanted to eat. I thought more than 2 million was quite a lot, but after sweeping it all, I spent hundreds of thousands in an instant. I haven't bought all kinds of medicines and tools yet. I resisted the urge to continue spending money, muttering that making money is like eating shit and spending money is like diarrhea. The next day, Zhang Fan spent more than 8,000 yuan to buy an off-road motorcycle. He got on the newly purchased motorcycle and started raiding pharmacies, buying packages one by one. The sales staff were shocked. He had just experienced the new coronavirus, and it was very sensitive to buy various medicines in large quantities. In order not to make people suspicious, he waved his hand and sealed each clerk's 200 red envelopes. In just 3 days, he filled up the 2 bedrooms and 1 living room in his hometown, which was more than 80 square meters, the so-called Cunning Rabbit's 3 caves. In addition, he rented 2 places to stay and put some eating and drinking utensils. In the past few days, he slept for a few hours every day, and the rest was to unpack express packages. In the old community, many elderly people saw how crazy Xiao Zhang was and began to spread gossip. Zhang Fan couldn't explain it easily. He could only say that he was now a host and started to bring goods. These were all goods to be brought. He didn't care about other people's doubts and delayed it day by day. Anyway, he firmly believed that the end of the world was bound to come. He didn't have time to take care of his children these days. On the contrary, he also sent many tasks to his children, bought several paid accounts, and asked his children to start downloading various books, maps, encyclopedias, tutorials, and of course games. What drives Zhang Fan to be so crazy is the jade pendant that glows abnormally every midnight. Each time the jade pendant glows longer than the previous one. Today is the 4th time. Zhang Fan began to make his own plan. He forced his son to exercise with him every day. When he was tired, he would watch wilderness survival programs and ask each other questions for exams. A week after returning to his hometown, the father and son were playing with the crossbows they bought. There was a knock on the door. An aunt in her 50s stood at the door and said, "I am from the neighborhood committee, and you are Xiao Zhang. You haven't been back for more than 10 years. I hugged you when you were a child. Now the child is so big. I see that it has been a week since you came back with your child, and you have not reported to the neighborhood committee, and the child has not gone to school. I came over to see if I can help. If you can, just ask." Zhang Fan blocked the door to prevent anyone from entering. The more than 80 square meters of the house was almost full, and the furniture had been disposed of. In the evening, the 2 of them spread out bedding and slept on the rice pile. At this time, they could only talk outside the door. After sending away the aunt who called herself Aunt Hong, Zhang Fan was in a dilemma. It had been more than a week, and there was no way. Seeing the movement, he firmly believed that something big was going to happen, but the neighbors around him were obviously suspicious. He felt that this was not possible, so he went home and packed up and moved to the number 2 base. He couldn't take his things with him, so he went there to avoid the limelight. Zhang Fan took his son and moved to a rental house that night. After sending a group text message to all the relatives and friends he considered important, he removed the battery and never turned it on again. Who would send text messages these days? It was densely packed with more than 100 words, saying that something big was going to happen. He was fine now. Don't worry about him. Everyone must pay attention. Everyone who received the text message thought that Zhang Fan was out of his mind. The next day, Zhang Fan and his son continued to exercise and study. Near noon, the sky suddenly became dark again, and the jade pendant on his chest emitted bursts of red light. This time, the darkness lasted for about half an hour. Zhang Fan took his son's hand and said to him, Xiao Fan, Dad, let me tell you, no matter what happens in the future, don't panic. Time is running out now. We must seize the time to exercise. My son, who has just entered kindergarten, seemed to understand. He held Zhang Fan's hand tightly and did not dare to let go. He only muttered, I miss my mother. A week later, the sky darkened again. At this time, rumors were spreading on the internet, and the outside world was no longer peaceful. Even though the official propaganda continued that this was a natural phenomenon that was consistent with science, ordinary people had their own scales. They spontaneously raided supermarkets and pharmacies, and hoarded supplies became more and more crazy. The armed police began driving patrols around the clock, and lawbreakers were arrested from time to time. During this period of time, the two father and son had not left the house, and their mobile phones had not been turned on. Zhang Fan did not know that the joke-like text message he had sent to everyone had begun to spread wildly, and countless people began to look for Zhang Fan. However, last week, trains, planes, highways, etc. across the country were blocked, and the network signal was intermittent. Zhang Fan, who was hiding in the number 2 base of Cunning Rabbit 3 Cave, was unknown to anyone. It had been 3 weeks since the first dark. Zhang Fan had a premonition that maybe the sun would never appear again the next time it was dark. Zhang Fan turned on the privately purchased micro radio, took out his mobile phone, and sent the last text message to everyone in his address book. The next time it might be dark forever. He turned off the phone and removed the battery. He took his son to the window and stared at the sun outside the window again and again. 2 headless flies. Zhang Fan clearly feels that the outside is not peaceful. Alarms sound from time to time, and the water and electricity supply is intermittent. The civilian network has been paralyzed. Safety and food are not problems now. Zhang Fan's most urgent thing is to find out what happened. The radio station he bought privately is in reception mode all day long, and most of the messages on the radio are for people not to panic. Various regions have begun to establish their own regional autonomy. The small town where he lives also mentioned on the radio that regional grid management allows people to stay at home, and the streets are under control. Officials began to come to the door to register and process information. He and his son were assigned to Group 27, District 3, South Street. Because it is a small city and an old community, there are not many young people. Zhang Fan, who is in his 30s, was appointed as the temporary information registrar and got a walkie-talkie. He needs to verify the information of 27 groups of 20 households every day and report it to Officer Zhang, the person in charge of District 3. It has to be said that the efficiency of the government is still relatively high in this situation. It can quickly build a network and contact the people at the end. However, Zhang Fan had no intention of being an information registrar. He had not seen the sun for 2 days since the last time it got dark. The jade pendant on his body also changed from white to light pink, as if the jade pendant had eaten long-lost food from the darkness, and he had also been exposed to the light. To be precise, he was no longer sleepy. He had not felt sleepy for 2 days and was full of energy. Zhang Fan didn't know whether it was because he hadn't taken the medicine to treat mental weakness recently or something else, but he just felt inexplicably uneasy and panicked. Zhang Fan had read a lot of novels more than 10 years ago and imitated the plots in them. He manipulated the jade pendant in various ways, knelt down and kowtowed and recited various incantations, pricked his finger and dripped blood to identify the owner, almost smashed the jade pendant open, or tried to fuse it with human and jade after eating it in his stomach. In the end, Zhang Fan panicked and stopped this meaningless behavior. He went door to door at 8 o'clock every day to inquire about the situation, fulfilling the basic duties of an information registrar. Elderly people in small cities in the north still have the habit of storing food. Food is not in short supply now. After getting used to it, the human eye can see some things after getting used to it. Then the water supply began to be intermittent, and many electrical appliances were abnormal. It is now the end of November. Heating is not provided, and snow has already fallen in some areas. There are also psychological problems. Among the 20 households that Zhang Fan belongs to, several households worship various gods, including Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, and God. People from these special households began to constantly win over other residents to believe in their gods, and the verbal conflicts escalated to physical contact. In the process of persuading Zhang Fan, he was pushed to the ground. His head accidentally hit a hard object, and he fainted. The other residents stopped arguing when they saw this. Zhang Fan, who fainted, seemed to have seen a strange piece of text. Although he didn't recognize it, he seemed to understand the meaning of the sentence. The heavens and the earth are connected. A great disaster is coming. Everything is silent. You should exercise your body and draw your breath, and go away quickly. As soon as Zhang Fan was lifted up by someone's hands and feet, he regained consciousness and returned home feeling dizzy. After reporting the information to Officer Zhang of the family, Officer Zhang said that he had done a good job and would report the situation to his superiors. Now the superiors have begun to prepare to mobilize resources to deliver water and food to the people. After completing the task, Zhang Fan and his son continued to exercise and watched videos to learn about survival in the wild. I don't know why, but half of the screen started to blur, and then the snowflake screen appeared, and the content was gone. Zhang Fan thought that the lack of content was a problem with the download source, so he switched to another video and opened it. Within a few minutes, there was no screen intermittently, and the IP80 had only been used for less than an hour, and the battery level dropped to 31%. Zhang Fan guessed that this might be the reason for the network paralysis and intermittent water and electricity supply. When his son fell asleep at night, Zhang Fan took out a pen and paper and began to draw in circles. First, he wrote supplies and jade pendants. Now, the supplies in his 3 residences were almost enough for him and his son to eat freely for 2 years. There was still no further change in the jade pendant. Currently, it can make him energetic without sleeping, which should improve people's physique. Then he wrote, Information Observer. This is his current official position, and he can communicate with his superiors to obtain some information. Information in disguise is synonymous with power. Although there are countless levels of superiors above him, he is still much better than ordinary people. At present, the power of the battery is beginning to fade quickly. He can't imagine what will happen if electricity, an important energy source for human beings, has problems. He picked up a pen and marked information, rights, and materials equals, then thought about it and crossed it out. He always felt that it was inappropriate for the current supplies to be sufficient. Finally, he wrote the following words, Heaven and earth are connected. Great disasters are coming. Everything is silent. You should exercise your body and draw your breath, and go away quickly. Zhang Fan picked up the pen and circled the words catastrophe, fortify the body and draw energy, and go away quickly. Zhang Fan decided to take 2 paths, while using the increasingly scarce materials to exchange information to gain power and promote his official position. That way, if there is a big disaster, hiding in the crowd will be much better than carrying the child alone. At least there will be other lower-level people to help him resist some harm. On the other hand, he was studying and pondering this body training and Qian training method to strengthen himself and increase his bargaining chip. He always felt that if a catastrophe came, personal force was still the key to protecting him and his children, and he couldn't be careless. Zhang Fan imitated the meditation in martial arts movies and TV shows and began to let go of his thoughts. After a night passed, he didn't realize anything, but he felt a little confused. He woke up the child, and the 2 of them had something to eat. Zhang Fan solemnly called the child over and hung the jade pendant on his son. Xiao Fan, this is our family's ancestral jade pendant. You should keep it for Dad. Don't let it out, and don't tell anyone. Zhang Fan had actually wanted to experiment with the jade pendant for a long time, but he was afraid that something might happen if his child was too young. However, in the past few days, he found that there seemed to be no risk, so he asked his son to wear the jade pendant. After taking the jade pendant, Zhang Fan felt that his mind was even more confused, and he could hardly raise his eyelids. He quickly told him to exercise and study hard. His father was sleepy and wanted to take a nap, so he fell asleep on the floor without caring about his daily inspection tasks. Zhang Fan didn't know how long he had slept, but he only felt that his limbs were warm and tingling. Seeing his father asleep, Xiao Fan secretly picked up his iPad and started playing Tomcat 2. He had already forgotten Zhang Fan's instructions. At noon, Zhang Fan's walkie-talkie rang. It turned out that Officer Zhang saw that the observers of Group 27 had not reported the information, so he called him. Xiao Fan said that his father fell asleep because he was sleepy. When Officer Zhang found out, he asked Xiao Fan to wake up his father and said that there was a document coming down and it needed to be implemented as soon as possible. Xiao Fan walked to his father and shook himself. Zhang Fan, who was sleeping comfortably, felt that the earth was shaking as if he was falling into the abyss, and his breath was a little disordered. When Xiao Fan couldn't shake him, he told Officer Zhang that his father was too sleepy to wake up. Officer Zhang responded with a few words and told Xiao Fan that when his father woke up, it was important for his father to contact him as soon as possible, and then hung up the walkie-talkie. When Zhang Fan woke up in the middle of the night, he immediately looked at his watch. It was already early in the morning, and he found that the sky seemed not to be dark anymore. It was a bit like dusk gray.